Next number, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, and of course, I'm just going to say that this is the linchpin to your way of proving quote unquote, the simulation. 138.
Well, you already know that 138 is everywhere in the Great Pyramid. I know you've seen those videos. I know you studied those charts and looked at them.
Yep.
138 is everywhere. But you also know 138 is the number of years between visitations of the Phoenix phenomenon. And we have way too much evidence of the operation of that phenomenon. And not only the operation of a linear projection of 138, but you can take the Vedic calendar as well. And you can start with the Vedic calendar. I even have one video that demonstrates this. You can take the Vedic calendar and you will find that very significant events in world history were all in multiples of 138 from the start of the Vedic calendar. I thought that was really interesting because that's not on the Phoenix timeline, but it is a Phoenix reckoning calendar. It just starts at a different time. So I've played with it and I found 138 is the number separating many, many major events in world history. But as far as a single unbroken linear projection starting in the ancient past and going all the way to 2040, yes, the Phoenix phenomenon is every 138 years somewhere. And it's a number, 138, that's mentioned many times in different records and in different ways, such as the ancient Egyptians referred to it not as 138 years. There's an actual Egyptian text that refers to a period involving a flooding that was at the end of a 1,656 month period. But that's not mysterious. Remember, I have many videos showing the Egyptians did not recognize a solar year based off the Western version calendars. They counted moons. They counted months. This is why Solon's Atlantis could have never been when Graham Hancock says it was, because there was no Greece to it that they could have been in a war with at that time anyway. Egypt was not around at that time. But when you use the factoring system known by the Egyptians, the lunar count, then we understand. Atlantis was during the Sea Peoples Confederation invasions of the Mediterranean. And yes, archaeologists do confirm that Greece, Mycenae, and Egypt were all at war with a foreign power. Every bit of it it perfectly fits the historical record and is backed up by history, archaeology, ancient texts, all kinds of situational deals when we use the proper calendar. And it was 138 years. This is what the Egyptians understood. They counted it in moons. So, and I've demonstrated many incidences of the 138-year period known in antiquity in different ways.
So, speaking of 138, you've also made some comments relating 137 to 138 and this idea of a pattern break. Could you speak to that? Because that's a very fascinating concept.
Well, if the Phoenix phenomenon is truly a phenomenon, and I believe it is, because we have to backtrack a little bit. My paradigm had me producing information that comported with it, meaning I was a Christian and I believed that we lived on a rock 93 million miles away from the sun that 6 months from now would be 186.5 million miles from where it was 6 months previously. Which I know isn't true anymore because I know we can't even demonstrate the parallax. We can't show that we've moved at all. And then science has done a great deal of covering this up. But it wasn't covered up in the 1890s and early 20th century when it was scientists that were talking about this lack of parallax. So it's a phenomenon. We're not moving. And since we're not moving, that changes my whole perspective of what's happening. It doesn't change the chronology. It doesn't change the fact that in 4309 BC, Phoenix appeared and destroyed a civilization and did it again in the Great Reset of Genesis in 3895. Again in 2653, again the Great Flood, collapse of the vapor canopy, the day the sky fell in 2239 BC, which was the year 1656. Annus Mundi mentioned in Genesis, the year 1656 of Noah's flood. It doesn't change any of this historicity, the Ogygian deluge, and the creation of the Anno Domini calendar we're under today, when the Catholic Church hid the 552-year Phoenix cycle of the old world. Listen, it doesn't change any of that. So if it can't change the historical facts, then that means we're not dealing with an intruder planet, because I don't believe in that anymore. We're dealing with a phenomenon that's in the sky. It's hidden. It's never gone anywhere. It's there. It just only manifests every 138 years. Enter the new discovery in the past century, of the fine structure constant. If we live in a construct, and in linear, in the programming, every 138 years, the Phoenix phenomenon expends a tremendous amount of energy. Sometimes it's focused over a small locale. Sometimes it's focused on a continent. Sometimes it's focused on a hemisphere. And 3 or 4 times in history, it's been focused on the entire world. Whatever the situation is, every 138 years, it's expending a tremendous amount of energy. So if that's the case, and it's recorded in the dimensions of the Great Pyramid, and if we take all the traditions and discoveries of the Great Pyramid, we find a holographic construct of all the physics constants in our world can be found in the dimensions of the Great Pyramid. They're there for a reason. Pi, phi, curvature equations, entropy, obliquity, it's all in there in those measurements with 138. So, taking all this into consideration, now I have to apply what physicists found. If we're living in a construct and all this is demonstrable, and yet the construct has a pulse, it's like a heartbeat. If it has this heartbeat, this pulse, and they measure it at 137, which is 137 point something, 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 if they do that, and I have to now associate that to the Phoenix phenomenon. I can't keep those independent of each other. It's too close. Meaning, if you take 138 blocks, we'll call them years. If you take 138 blocks and you put them on a line, it's 138 blocks. But if I take another 138 identical blocks and I put them on the same line connected to each other, I can't say that's 138 plus 138 blocks. There's no distinction. It's 276 blocks now. But that's not how it's designed. There must be a very small incremental period of time when there's a disjunction between the two 138 block segments. That's the fine structure constant. That's the little space between that now turns hundreds and thousands of blocks into segments of 138. This is the heartbeat of the construct.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Hey, Jason, do you ever worry about like getting Mandela affected yourself, and you wake up one of these days and you realize that, reading back through your work and stuff, that all this time you've been promoting a 139-year Phoenix cycle?
No, that'd make an interesting movie, but no, I can't.
So,
but